Hello and welcome to another dark and damp morning here in beautiful Nova Scotia. The damp summer that we're having is definitely carrying on through at the moment. Another night of rain, which is no big deal. It's going to bring its problems over the next few weeks, I'm sure, with diseases starting to come around the different plants. But I'm not here for that this morning. It's, I think, garlic harvesting time. I've got particular sort of interest or a sort of a bit of a birthday type thing, a day to celebrate for me even, because garlic was the first thing I did the week after I had my throat cancer operation. So I had an operation last October 14th, I think most of you who watch the channel will know, and then recovery after that. But I think it was like a week or so afterwards, sneaked out, you know, Mrs. F wasn't watching for a change. I sneaked out into the garden and planted this garlic, and here it is now, been growing strongly all the way through the winter and the early summer. And I've had a quick check of one of them, just to make sure. And how I normally check anyway from looking above is sort of half of the stems, the leaves of the stems, if they've gone brown, and that's normally about 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4 have gone brown, and this one's going. Then I think they're ready. So any longer and they'll start to rot and they're not growing anymore, and I can use this bed for something else to grow nice and juicy after this. So I'm going to whip these out and see what sort of harvest, and I thought I'd get you along to join me. So that's number one, looking good so far anyway. Right, so I'm using a fork. So I'm using a fork. Obviously I don't want to pull them because then I can damage the sort of the neck of the actual garlic, and I don't want to do that. And I don't want to damage the garlic bulb at all, do I? And this garlic lasted me all the way through the winter, and only literally about 6 weeks ago did it become too soft, gone over for me not to use it. So, you know, really good harvest of garlic last year, lasts all the way through the winter. And also this is the cloves as well I used to replant this year's crop. So let's have a look, shall we? Right, so there's number one. Last year was the first year I used seaweed. Oh, look at the size of that one. Flipping absolute beauty. Yeah, it was the last year I used seaweed as a mulch, and it's been really good. Obviously it's kept the weeds down, and it looks so far that the garlic has rather enjoyed it. Lever that up gently. Another nice one there. So they're looking good so far. Yes, look at these, absolute beauties these are. So it's quite amusing at the moment. We're having quite damp weather here in Nova Scotia. Still warm most of the time. And back in my home country of the UK, they're this week basking in red hot temperatures, up in the 30s in a few places. And it always used to make me laugh, and it still does, whenever they have really hot weather in the UK. Obviously we're not known for our really hot weather over there. It's always the headlines, hotter than the Mediterranean, or hotter than Death Valley. There's always a picture. Yep, all looking good these are. There's always a picture of Bournemouth Beach full of sunbathers, and a big headline, sunbathers flock to Bournemouth Beach. So they're having their summer at the moment with some rather hot weather, and long may they enjoy it, because we often have damp weather over there and cool weather. But I'm obviously living in Canada now, and we have absolutely, even if it's a bit damp, it's still warmer than I'm used to weather, and very nice it is too. Except for the mosquitoes. Right, I'm going to carry on with these, and then I'll come back to you to once I've harvested them all, and then we can talk about next steps. What do you reckon? See you in a minute. So there we go. That is all of the garlic pried up, as they say. And what a great harvest it is. As I showed you, the first ones, that's your sort of a bigger one, but on average, so I've got two types of garlic I planted. Music, which is this bigger stuff, and it's generally been really big. A few small ones, but 98% of it is nice, big, juicy, fat bulbs. So really pleased with that. And then I've got this Red Russian, and it has a red tint to it. Is generally smaller, which it always is, but I think it has a bit more of a stronger flavour. But both of them are super harvests, and this mulch that I put down, which was actually a thick mulch of leaf mould, and then in the spring, once they started coming up strongly, I put a nice mulch of seaweed on as well. This good thick mulch has obviously helped them keep that soil underneath damp, to let them suck in all the energy, and the seaweed really helps to sort of feed them. So a good mulch can't be I can't say enough about a good mulch, and any of your plants really, but it's really helped this garlic. So we've dug it up now, but we've got to get it ready to store, etc. I need to dry it out. So I've done the prying, now it's time for the drying. Join me over there. Hello, well, welcome to my drying store, otherwise known as under the eaves of my shed. So what do we want to do now? We've harvested the garlic, now we want to dry them. And we want to dry them because I want to store them over a long period of time. Obviously not going to eat 70 cloves of garlic within a couple of weeks, and if I don't do that, then they'll spoil. So here's the garlic at the moment, covered in sort of mud still, damp. We've got the stem here and the roots. Underneath here, I don't want to rub it too much. Let me see if I've got a cleaner one. So we have, when you buy your garlic normally, it's sort of it feels all papery, the skin on top of the actual clove. Well, that's actually the stem. So each one of these leaves goes back to a layer of the actual garlic clove itself. And what we want to do is we want to dry that layer around the clove, paper dry, nice and dry, so that we lock the moisture inside the actual garlic clove, and then that will taste lovely when we eat it. But we'll also, because it's dry on the outside, it will keep for that much longer. And then, like I said, I had it all the way over the winter. So we want to dry the clove out, and then once it's all dry, I want to dry it so that it's all nice and brown all the way up the stem. And then once that's dry and the skin itself is nice and papery dry, then I'll chop the stem off about 1 inch up, and then chop the actual roots themselves off, and we'll give this a good clean. I don't want to clean it too much now, because what I'll do is I'll damage the actual clove and the skin itself. So I want to find an area, a nice light dry area where it's got a good bit of airflow, that I can store these for a couple of weeks while they're drying. So I've got underneath the eaves of my actual shed, could be a shed itself, could be a greenhouse. Oh, mosquito attack, get out of it. So I've got these underneath the eaves of my shed, and what I've done here is I've got some chicken wire and I've laid it over a couple of lengths of wood. Nothing particularly complicated about that. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to lay as much as I can the cloves of garlic on the actual my drying rack, for want of a better phrase. I'm also, because I know I'm not going to have enough room, I'm going to tie some bunches of garlic to some nails that, as you can see, I've got nailed on these beams here, and we'll come to that in a minute. But first of all, I'm just going to lay. So I'm going to lay the music. I think I've got most, and they're the biggest anyway. I'm going to lay them all out on this drying rack. So, if possible, a little bit of room in between. You know, and in the summer heat, they'll soon dry up, but you know, it does take a couple of weeks. But that's good. And then we'll have months and months of not having to. I can't remember how much it costs for garlic nowadays, because I never buy any. And obviously over the last 6 weeks or so, I've had garlic scapes. I've still got garlic scapes in the fridge, using that to sort of flavour my dishes and making garlic pesto, and using it in with garlic and basil pesto as well. So we've had a double harvest off this garlic, but now for the real show. Right, so let me lay the rest of these out, and then we'll get to the actual ones where we're hanging them and stringing them up, and we'll see how that looks. Be right back. So as you can see, all I've literally done is just laid the cloves of garlic out on the chicken wire. So one layer at the top, and then sort of separated the next layer so that they're all getting a nice bit of air, and then the last remaining bulbs down here all getting a nice airflow around them and able to dry. Let's have a look at our hanging ones now, shall we? Right, so we've got our music all nice and laid out on the bottom row here. Now I'm just going to use these beams to add a different way of drying them off. So all I've done is I've got 6 here, stems of garlic here. I've just tied them together and then tied a little loop on the end, and that's it. Literally just hanging these up this way. They'll dry nicely, got a nice bit of air around them. So this is a good way when you haven't got a lot of space down there. You can hang them all up and use the vertical, as I'm always saying. Oh. So I've made a couple of these a bit small. Could be disappearing behind the garlic now. So before I do disappear behind the garlic, I hope that's given you a few ideas. You know, getting that garlic out, making sure you sort of pry it out rather than pulling it out. Now drying it out, a couple of different ways to dry it out. And if you look up there, there's a link there now that shows another couple of ways you can make a sort of drying rack, etc., that I did last year. So anyway, I am chuffed to bits, as we say in England, with this garlic harvest. Job is definitely a good one.